This podcast is an expression of the personal views and opinions of the hosts and guests, and they do not represent the official stance of the podcast, its sponsors, or affiliated organizations. The podcast may cover topics such as drugs, mental illness, politics, and religion, which can be controversial or sensitive. The podcast does not support any illegal activities and advises listeners to seek help from appropriate professionals for any personal concerns related to these topics. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for professional advice. Listeners are urged to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any questions regarding their mental or physical health. The podcast and its creators are not responsible for any loss or harm resulting from the use or reliance on the information provided in the podcast.
Hey, yo, turn my mic up.
Let's get it on. Welcome to the Street Stoic podcast. Tonight, it's just me and Jay. Nate's under the weather, nursing cold upper respiratory stuff. So Nate, when you hear this, hope you're feeling better, man. Tonight, what we're going to talk about, I know you've brought it up. I've brought it up here on the podcast before. Today is the year anniversary that my best friend decided that he was going to end his life. So today, it's been an interesting day, Jay. It's been a heavy day, but also it's been a good day because I've been reflecting on a lot of good memories with my good friend Pat.
Yeah, man, I've gotten close to that feeling as far as understanding where you're at with like the passing of my sister-in-law when she passed away, and I understand how, like, especially seeing my wife and have to go through that, especially every year for anniversaries of her passing and stuff. Like, she'll try to not keep that in mind, but it's hard. It's just like something's ingrained and coded into that particular day, and it just hurts. Yeah, I mean, I understand. Um, it's definitely hard, but like you said, man, the best way of reflecting upon this person that's no longer here is just to look at the positive stuff that he left. The reason why this hurts you and the reasons why you feel this pain, that's the things you think about, the good times, all the stuff that made you appreciate this person and makes you now miss him. That's exactly how I feel when I think about uh, my sister-in-law and not being around no more. And you just got to think about the good stuff, man. Just positive, who that person was, what they brought to this world, and that's it. Just keep moving on, man.
Yeah, just keep moving on. That's um, he was the life of the party. He always brought laughs to everybody. I mean, that guy was electric. I remember in high school, um, he at basketball games. I was on the basketball team, and he created this persona called Superfan, and he had this like cat in a hat, blue and white hat that he would wear, all decked out in like blue sweatpants and blue sweatshirt, and he had this dinosaur bed sheet that he wore as a cape, and he'd do belly slides, and just like he'd get the crowd just going, like unreal. Um, just like he turned into our mascot, and he'd start the wave in the gym, and like it was a small school, but he had these old farmers and grandmas and grandpas. They were doing the waves and chanting and stuff. But that was just his personality. And uh, he was just the kindest person. He'd give you the shirt off of his back if you needed it. You call him any hour of the day for whatever it was, and he would be there. My wife and I, at our wedding, he did the service at our wedding, and it was just the same. He had everybody that was there, all the guests, they were laughing throughout the whole ceremony. It was great. That was something that I'm genuinely glad that we actually got to experience. So um, he left his wife and three beautiful daughters, and I reached out to them today, and they they were having a hard day, but also that I just reminded them, remember the good times. Um, that's it, it's sad that he's not here, but it's uh, he did a lot of good for them, and uh, just that's what you got to focus on, like you're saying. So tonight, I think Jay and I we picked a couple of quotes. I think they're pretty powerful quotes, and hopefully tonight we can just kind of talk about how we want to encourage those people who are struggling to reach out. There's a better way. I know uh, both Jay and I on the podcast we've talked about our struggles with mental health, and I've been close to being in that same boat, leaving everybody behind. A lot of people, what they don't think about is the the after effects. You're in that moment, you're struggling, um, and that is the only way that you see that you can fix the problem is to that's your only way out. Um, but that there are resources out there. There's people who care. I know, um, for my friend, if he would have told me that he was struggling that night, I would have dropped whatever I was doing and been with him. You know, and there's a whole community of people here in middle of the Willamette Valley in Oregon that would have been there with him. He had a crowd of people there telling him what a good person he was, and that he needed to still be here. So tonight, that's kind of what we're going to be going off. Jay, do you have any other thoughts before we get into our quotes?
Uh, just pretty much the same message that you put out there, man. If anybody is listening to this and is going through something rough right now, especially here in this country, in the U.S., everybody's feeling it somehow, or at least a majority of the population seems to be feeling it somehow, as far as either economically or just stressed out over a lot of the things that are kind of happening elsewhere. It's one of those things too where I would just kind of discourage kind of indulging in way too much of that information, because at the end of the day, it's kind of, you're not there. You, yeah, a lot of people want to be informed to certain things as far as what's going on just to be safe over here, but if it's something big, you'll find out eventually. So there's stuff like that can be avoided. And then just to get back on what I was having a conversation on, just there's all types of avenues out there. If you're having issues, I mean, I remember when I was going through some stuff, I I decided to look inward. Right, I looked inward to what's going on with me. Um, if it's reading a self-help book or some book on motivation, or just seeing the perspective of somebody else's life and how they have done something to try to figure out their life, try to take all those avenues. not all of that is for everyone. Some things can be applied from one, some things can be applied from another. Let's say genre of motivational information. Take and apply whatever works best for you. That's kind of what I've done. I would not push anything in particular as far as what anyone should do, but if you're feeling it, man, just try to figure out something. There's so much information now. I know that it's hard once you're deep in it because I've been in it where it's so frustrating to get out of that dark cloud. Um, Everything just seems so difficult. Uh, but at the end of the day, we can't. Part of that is worrying about the future, and what we have to focus on is, obviously the present, and find that opportunity to make things better from that point on, and not allow whatever the fears it is that you think will are continuing, or that whatever hardship it is that you have going on. Today does not define always what tomorrow will bring. So just figure something out to improve yourself from today on. Whomever that message helps out, I hope it helps out a lot of people. But I know that just words like that aren't always enough for certain people, because certain people have a lot, a lot that they've gone through in life, and I understand how rough it can be, especially mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just reach out, seek some sort of help. You probably don't realize what type of effect you can have, a positive effect on somebody else, and you would take that opportunity away from them. So try and
Mm-hmm.
find, for their sake and your own sake, because you're the most important person in there. Ask for help. There are friends out there that if they're your true friends, then they will, pick up the phone, pick up, answer a text, just to kind of, hey, what's going on, because a lot of times too, as far as guys, they don't divulge a lot of that type of information amongst each other. I guess it's kind of the way that we grew up. Some of us, um, we kind of hide it sometimes, but I think we've learned a lot at this point in our existence to know that, okay, we can't keep this stuff inside. We're starting to learn now that, you have to somehow talk about it, release it. I know me and you, Mike, have had conversations about this off air, but with this podcast, just kind of feels like that for me, like therapy session, pretty much, of being able to get
Right.
whatever it is that I'm feeling, or maybe I'm uneasy about, or I have a conversation on it to clear me up and just kind of get it off my chest. So somehow find somebody, talk. Don't hold all of that in your head. Let somebody else, tell you, you know, that it isn't that bad. It's not. Sometimes it's not as bad as you think. It's just the initial moment that you're fearing everything, as far as, the worst of the worst in life, but sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's not. Yeah, it's true. That's good stuff. Uh, getting into these quotes, um, I picked one from Marcus Meditations. Always some solid stuff in that. Um, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Um, so when I first read that quote, uh, all the counseling and all the treatment that I've been through for depression and anxiety, everything that tells you you can't control your thoughts. So I read that and I was like, well, what were you thinking, Marcus? Because you can't control your thoughts. Um, but then the more I started to think about that quote, I thought, it's true. You can't control your thoughts. You can't control the thoughts that come into your head. But you can control how those thoughts affect you. You can uh, control how you respond to those thoughts. Um, our thoughts are based off of our perceptions, emotions, what's going on in our life. Like Jay was just talking about the present. That's what controls our thoughts. And those thoughts will pop into your head, and we don't have control of when they do or why they do or what that thought is. The one thing that I have really found interesting in this Stoic journey is that the principles of Stoicism, they really coincide with a lot of what modern mental health therapy and a lot of ideologies based off of. Journaling is a big one. I know at the hospital I work at, a lot of the counselors there and doctors, that's one thing that they do with the patients is they will have them journal. There's journaling groups treatment groups where they just journal what's going on, what got them there to the hospital. It's those Stoic philosophies, they can really shift how your perception of what those thoughts are challenging you to do and what they're challenging you to perceive what is the problem. And that's where those thoughts get you in trouble is when your perception is, that's the way out. That's the way to end those thoughts. That's the only way. Is I got to do something to end them, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to end them. And changing that perception of that there's so much more that you could be doing, and that that those actions to end your life is going to affect. The wake of suicide is, until you're in it, you don't understand it. You hear of people ending their own life, and I know in the past, before it hit into my own personal life, I'd hear about it. And, oh man, that sucks. That's really sad. That person's not here anymore. But until you experience what that aftermath is, one second they're there, the next second they're gone, and they're not coming back. Still to this day, a year later, I'll hear something. Our big thing that we would laugh about was, we'd watch South Park every week, because we still had the mentality of 14-year-old boys. So we'd watch South Park every week, and then we'd always, right after the episode, we were texting or calling, or I'd go over to his house, he'd come over to my house, and we'd just laugh about that episode of South Park. So since he's died, I've probably only seen a handful of episodes, just because it's not the same, but I was watching it the other day, and I thought, oh man, Pat would love this. I can't call him. I can't get a hold of him to laugh about it. You don't understand that when you're in it. You don't understand that's an effect that's gonna affect your loved ones when your perception of those thoughts is that my only way out is to end it. And really what what I encourage, if this is your first exposure to Stoicism, is this episode, and you're in that mindset, just get into it, immerse yourself into Stoicism. There's lots of tools that Stoicism teaches you to lift yourself out of that. Um, like Jay was talking about looking inward. He had to look inward. That's what Stoicism is looking inward, um, and letting that stuff that's outside not change your perspective on what those thoughts are. Um, at the end of the day, it's just a thought, and that thought is not necessarily your reality. Um, you may think it is, right? But what you're thinking and what you're seeing is not what it is, not what truly what it is. I know, Pat. He didn't have a very high opinion of himself whatsoever. He experienced a lot of things that caused a lot of trauma that he struggled with, and we had long, deep conversations about those. He'd call me over. I spent a lot of nights at his house making sure that he was going to be okay. And that particular night a year ago, he decided that wasn't what he needed. And that was his perspective on what that thought was. And um, I'm telling you, at his ceremony of life, the room was packed. There was 600 people there, um, there to support the family and support his friends, and were there because they loved him. Um, that's a lot of options that you have, to talk to. That's a lot of people that will support you. And if you're in the middle of it, I guarantee that you don't. And I know that I've felt like I haven't had anybody. But I guarantee that those same people that were at his funeral would be at mine, um, with those same thoughts. Like if Mike would have just called me, um, it's not um, it's not the end. It doesn't have to be. So um, just like I said, immerse yourself in it. Look inward and and really get to the root of what's going on. There's a lot of resources out there. So
Definitely. One of the personal, I guess, experiences with it is, how I just one day decided to give it a try. uh, to continue to bring back the mushroom trip, but once obviously I had that experience the first time or second time around, and kind of, I don't, for whatever reason, opened up my mind to see and view the world a little bit differently, and kind of become more of an analytical person to analyze the surroundings and kind of people around me and their behavior, and kind of start figuring out why people do things and what's led them to that, and kind of understand that, okay, everybody's got something else going on. What I apply as a rule to myself in my life doesn't apply to somebody else, and finding, I don't want to say it like that either because it just sounds cheesy, but just being told, or just that suggestion of, hey man, maybe you want to give this book a read, because, or a listen on YouTube, because you might actually have some resonance with it, where you'll find that a lot of things you're saying is kind of the same thing that these guys were already saying a long time ago. I was like, what? Cool. That sounds interesting. That somebody already kind of had an understanding of things like that. So reading that, or and also hearing it on audio, it's just like, wow, okay, interesting how the mind works, how we're the ones that are not fully in control a lot of times over our behaviors, and it's pretty much on us. We have to be the one to master those reactions, master the way that we want to hang on to a particular emotion, or allow for something to like completely derail you from from whatever path or journey you're on. It's and I understand it's a lot having to do with everyone's past and the way that they've grown up and how strong they are to be able to deal with these things. It's a difficult thing, but what I can definitely say is that if you are going through something like this, frustrations in life, give it a shot. You're not going to lose anything except gain maybe some bit of information, some new knowledge, as far as a philosophy goes of life. You may not find it that it applies to you. Cool, but there might be something else out there that will, because this isn't the only avenue. But this is a good start, because from here, it kind of allowed me to branch off to start diving into other things and like kind of looking at that and the spiritual aspect of life, and kind of how just kind of being in a better state of mind, and just kind of understanding that we are one kind of with everything in this world. It's all about the environment that you're in as well. And I know that it's not everyone's situation is the same. I've been I'm not going to say lucky. I feel like I, I I struggled a lot to get to where I'm at right now, and I'm pretty good. Like I'm comfortable. I'm not where I wish or would like to be, but right now I'm enjoying the present right now. It's awesome. I like the whole process of it, kind of the transition of moving here and just kind of establishing myself here. I wake up every morning still thinking like I'm living in a whole different new place that I'm supposedly going to call home forever. Um, and we'll see. Um, but I'm enjoying it. I'm finding things to definitely like about things here, and it's not that hard. So it's try to find the good, try to find something out of life is my message when it comes to all of this. But definitely, if you have something going on, give us Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, any of the philosophers. I mean, you can even go a little bit more modern, closer to our time, if you feel like that's just way too far back. But give something in the realm of Stoicism a shot as far as a read. Just kind of you'll see that it could definitely help somehow.
Uh, Tim Ferriss has a lot of resources out there too. I know, and I just listened to the Tools for Titans, and he's got a whole section on there in that book about suicide and how he was struggling with it. Excuse me. And he actually made a promise to his brother once it all came out to his family that he was struggling, that he wouldn't do it. And that's what keeps him going. And when he's struggling, he'll seek out help for that. So you're completely right. There's a whole bunch of stoicism resources that if you just immerse yourself in it, um, well, it'll help pull you out of it. Ryan Holiday's got a lot of good stuff too. He's probably the most recent Stoic out there, that's putting out a whole bunch of good information. None of his stuff is that I've found is specifically about Stoicism, but it will definitely help you with perspective of your thoughts and looking inward and how to handle those hard situations. Jocko Willink. Listen to anything that like we've talked about it before. His whole good speech. Listen to that, and apply it. That's something that is, I refer back to that too, and we've had a whole episode on the poem "If." That's another. That was what got me started into Stoicism. Was Nate sitting there reciting "If" in that training that we didn't want to be in, um, but just taking that stanza by stanza and diving into it and thinking about it, meditating on it. Um, you Jay, you just talked about your mushroom stuff. There's a lot of positive things about the psychotropic stuff that will help treat depression and anxiety. With you know There's a whole bunch of ketamine treatments too, that I've looked in for myself, and have really considered. So, Jay, you got something?
Yeah, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Really good documentary on Netflix. I even grabbed this book because I actually uh, heard it on Audible because I had picked that book up as well. Wanted to hear it as well on audio form. Definitely good stuff. The way that it's broken down. Um, Pretty much any of the psychoactive drugs, pretty much medicine, uh, and how their effect on the brain
Yeah,
and on their studies of it from like the 70s and stuff. Um, how they've seen improvements and how they've been using it for like a lot of PTSD vets. Um, it's incredible the the results from all of this research and how knowledgeable we are now as far as some of the effects that they've had on people, the improvements at that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Jay, you picked a quote for us tonight.
Yeah, I got a quote. So I went with a Seneca quote that I believe maybe we've used before, but I think it applies very well here. Um, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality.
Mm,
That that's 100% truth, man. A lot of times there are things in this life that we'll stress out about, that we'll complain about, that we'll feel like it's frustrating that we can't have control about it. That's a lot of times it's not even things worth even being frustrated about. It's not even worth stressing about. A lot of what we live in our daily lives are it's a thing that I love telling people often now. It's just like that's a made up rule. It's a made up rule that we decided to live by, and everyone's just agreeing to live by the same made up rule. And because of this made up rule that you've decided to continue applying to your life, you're now frustrated because you cannot keep up to the rules that you're setting for yourself. Sometimes things should not be applied to someone's life. There's people that are overly anal about cleanliness, let's say in their home. Sometimes, especially let's say from the aspect of kids, that's maybe the best example that I can probably give. um, a lot of times we complain about the messes that kids make. It's like they're kids. You gotta teach them how to do it on their own when they're able to do it on their own. But until they're able to do it on their own, you're gonna have a mess. You're gonna have to be frustrated that there's gonna be toys all over the
mhm.
place. You just pick them up, put them away. I've had to learn that the hard way because I used to get frustrated all the time, and now and then,
Yeah.
it's things that you kind of start picking up on. Um, you'll hear stuff from older people that they've already experienced. Younger kids. It's like those are the moments that you're gonna want to wish you never blew up about, because you're gonna not have that one day, and then you're gonna wish that you still had that happen. Even as frustrating as you felt it was at that time, later on you're gonna wish that, oh, I wish, there was still messes here. 20, 30 years down the road, it's like, oh, there's no toys here no more. There's not a mess, because that's just life. Things progress, so you got to enjoy that moment right then and there, even if it's a mess. Enjoy the process of cleaning it up, because you'll never get that moment again. And I've learned that now, and I feel like I'm way better at that, enjoying that process of like frustrating that I have to continue to tell my daughters to like pick up their room or do something. It's just like, one day I'm not gonna have to be feeling this frustrated, but for now I'm gonna enjoy this, because I'm not gonna have this again. So yeah, that's where with that, the reasons why I picked that quote is because I think a lot of times, a lot of people that have been in those situations where they feel like life's hard, life's rough, life's not what I wish it would have been for me. I mean, there's so many different factors in life that could lead somebody to be so frustrated with their life. But the only message that I can probably just give out there from my own personal experience is just that moment that you're having is just right then and there. It's frustrating. It seems like it's going to last forever, especially if you're not a person who has had certain types of hardships, certain types of grief, certain types of things not working out for you. If you don't have that experience, or know that, okay, this isn't so bad, it's gonna feel like the worst thing in the world, like that you cannot recover from this ever again. Only if you set that rule for yourself, because it's a hindrance. You're putting a limit to whatever it is that you can do. There's so many people out there that have been able to recreate themselves, rebuild their life from like the worst thing in the world. They've been successful and then have come down, or whatever level of success that anyone can deem, and then they've come down crashing, and they've had to pick themselves up, and they've been able to get back up and be content with whatever it is that comes after that, because it it's part of the process. It's part of life. It's part of what all of this is. You have those ups and downs, and you have to be okay with that. You have to understand that sometimes life is good and sometimes it's rough. Right now things are real good. I'm enjoying everything, but I know that anything could happen. A year from now I can end up getting sick, somebody can end up getting sick, we end up in some issues financially, or things improve. I can't just hope for a particular thing to happen, because although I may try to manifest it in myself to try to achieve that, I have to work towards that, not on hope, not on wishing. I have to work to try to achieve that. So that particular process of working will help in the process of me not feeling like, oh, if I don't end up in this situation, I'm going to be super bummed out and I'm going to hate life. Just move on. And I understand it's difficult for everybody. Other people have other ways of dealing with certain things. And the other thing that I would probably say is patience. At the end of the day, have patience. Because if life sucks today, it doesn't mean it's going to suck tomorrow, or a year from now, or 2 years from now. Sometimes it takes time, but you have to be able to be willing and able to put your own part into all of this, to want to get better. Because if you just sit there and just hope that somebody's going to come make this better for you, it might not happen, especially if you don't become vocal about it and say, hey, I need help. So evaluate exactly what it is that you are stressing out about, and really ask yourself, is it worth it to be stressing out over this particular thing. This is a lot of times maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't. It's not something that somebody else would find as, you know, as something that they would, be upset about, or stressed out about. I like taking myself out of the situation in a lot of cases of my frustration, and just seeing how possibly somebody else may view my reaction to this, or how they may react to this particular situation, to understand that I'm only feeling like this because I've decided to allow this to be an issue for me. And those type of things, those kind of conversations in my mind help me reevaluate the situation. It's like, this is dumb. Somebody else somewhere else would probably laugh at me for telling them that I was frustrated about, couldn't find parking right in front of the location that I was supposed to be at 2 minutes ago. So stupid minor things like that, right? Because a lot of times it's not always just one thing, it's an accumulation of things. So if you're reducing the accumulating stress that you encounter every day, that you then deem your whole life as a mess, it's always shit, there's nothing ever that goes right. It's, you reevaluate what exactly is that's not going right for you in life, and see whether it's actually worth feeling that way.
It's interesting. It that you picked that quote tonight, because it goes to show that even the strongest minds can struggle with thoughts of suicide. Seneca himself died from suicide, um, and here we are centuries later, uh, talking about his quotes. And he was a strong-minded person. Um, all that to say, you're not alone. Even the strongest people struggle with thoughts of suicide. Um, couple of things I just wanted to throw out there for people who might be struggling with um, thoughts of suicide. There's lots of resources out there. Um, on our Facebook group, which is up and running, by the way. So look us up on Facebook, the Street Stoic Podcast. I made a post for my friend Pat on there today. Um, I mentioned in that post today that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, they got a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-273-TALK. There's also a simple 988. That is the suicide crisis hotline. Online, if you go to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP.org, lots of resources on there. Strongly encourage everyone, even if you're not struggling with suicide, to go on there and look and see. They've got a lot of good things to watch out for your loved ones. The last one is the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. It is SPRS, or excuse me, forget what I just said, sprc.org. They got a lot of good resources on there as well. So, Jade, you got anything else for us tonight?
No, we've pretty much covered it all. Again, reach out to somebody, uh, work on whatever it is you have going on. If you're feeling, stressed out, find avenues, find ways of trying to get that off of your chest, as far as the conversation or letting somebody know how you're feeling. Um, it's hard. The brain has its ways of providing us the way that we react, the way that it manifests in us. Sometimes It retains a lot of damage from trauma of some sort in our past, and it's difficult. I know, let's say someone from experience, how difficult it is to kind of get to that point of just having to understand like, oh, okay, this isn't this isn't just the way that I am because this is how I was born. I actually developed this way. My characteristics are this way because
Mm.
of how I was raised, what I experienced, and some of the just negativity that I've had to be surrounded by. It's not your fault that you've had to deal with that. It's not your fault that you had this type of experience in your life. So remove that blame from yourself and just try to work at trying to fix that particular thing. And that's probably the only thing that I can say in regarding that is just try to not blame yourself when it comes to these things, because a lot of times we didn't have a say sometimes in how we ended up in these situations, why we feel the way that we feel. This is now the way that we react because we're now traumatized over certain ways, and so our way of reacting is either negative or we feel some sort of negative way in that particular situation, or just some cause from some other trauma that then affects something else as far as the way that you react or the way that you feel about a certain situation. So just seek help, seek someone's just somebody's ear. I wouldn't want to say, reach out to us and just kind of, we're here to listen, but we do have the Discord up and running. Use that if it's still around whenever you're listening to this, because if anyone decides they want to just kind of let us know what's going on, I mean, there's a lot of people in there that would be willing to lend an ear, or some eyes to read, what's going on. I think someone posted today, and I haven't responded back to them, but um, sometimes I did that when I was young. I used to get into forums, and I would have some sort of issues going on in my daily lives. I'd start kind of just telling someone, just because somebody was there that actually respond and listen to that. So somebody could have time for you. It might not be around you, but that's also the magic of the internet sometimes, that there might be somebody somewhere else around this world that'll actually listen to what you have to say and just be like, hey man, it's okay, I've been there before, it's rough, and it'll get better. Just just hold on, be patient, it'll get better. It can definitely get better.
And it will. It will. So thank you all for listening. Pat, if you're listening, we miss you. We love you. Uh, and can't see you, dude. He'll get that if he's listening. So, all right. Jay, thanks for joining me tonight. It's always good to talk to you, brother.
Yeah, likewise, man. Peace.
Adios.